All right, today we are going to discuss the basics of how to create your city, especially your sidewalk and your roads, so that you are able to build your buildings around around those different things, okay? So at the end, we're going to have something that is closely similar to what this is. All right, this is kind of the object of what we're trying to go for. So first, you're going to need a blank sheet of paper, a ruler, and of course a pencil. To start off, we need to draw our horizon line. Remember, the horizon line is where the earth and the sky meet together. So I'm going to take my ruler and draw 3 inches down from the top of this paper. All right, 3 inches, and then connect those 2 marks together. Now, on this paper, you need to make sure that it is in a landscape. That means that it is longer than it is tall, correct? Now, draw the horizon line very lightly. You will be erasing it throughout this project at different stages, okay? Now we have our horizon line put in on this 11 inches. Half of 11 is going to be 5.5. We're going to practice putting our road smack dab in the middle of this paper. So I need you to just put a vanishing point right there in the middle at 5.5 inches. Okay, 5.5 inches there in the middle, 3 inches down on either side. Okay. Now, the next thing we have to do is get our road put in. If we don't have a road, we're not going to know where our sidewalk is going to be. So down here at the bottom of the paper, you need to line up your ruler. And again, we're going to work with the middle point being 5.5. We're going to draw over 2 inches to the right, which is a mark at 7.5 inches. And then 2 inches to the left, which is at 3.5 inches. Okay. From those 2 marks, we're just going to connect up with the vanishing point. I'm actually going to start on the vanishing point and then line up where the paper ends here at the 3.5, make a mark down. Start at the vanishing point again, line up my ruler to the 7.5, and draw a line down. All right, now that's our basic road. For this practice, things are going to be a little bit smaller than what they're going to be for on the final. Remember, the final is a 9x12, so it will be a little bit larger. Now we have our basic road. If we have this, we now need to start to create our sidewalk. What I'm going to do is turn my paper vertical so that the road ends here on the right side. Don't be drawing this part on the sky. We're going to zoom in here on the ruler just so we can see a little bit better. I'm going to make 3 different marks, okay? The first mark is at 1 inch. The next mark will be at 1/4 of an inch or 3/4 of an inch down. And then I'm going to make a mark at 1/8 of an inch, okay? So if we review our ruler, here's a full inch, 1/4 of an inch, and then half of that is 1/8 of an inch, okay? We're going to make that same mark down here on the other side of our paper. Notice we passed our road right there on the right side, all the way down, and then we lined up with our 1 inch down here on the bottom again. We're going to make a mark at the full inch, here at that 1/4, and there at the 1/8, okay? So you should have those 3 measurements in there. You should have 1 inch, 3/4 of an inch, and then half of that, which is 1/8 of an inch. We'll call this 1/4, okay? So those are your measurements, 1 inch, 1/4, and 1/8. Now that you have those measurements, let's zoom back out so we can see all of it. I'm going to first line up on our 1 inch marks. and I'm going to start on the road. Notice where I'm starting. I'm not going to draw a line all the way across, because why draw a line where you're just going to erase later anyway? I'm going to draw that off the paper to the right. Still with my ruler being held, draw off to the left. You can see where the top of the sidewalk is, right here, where we're going to be. Next, we're going to line up at the 1/4 of an inch. Again, start on the road, draw off the paper to the right, start here on the left, right on the road, draw off the paper to the left. Okay? Now, before I do anything with this 1/8 of an inch mark down here on the paper, I'm going to erase this section of the road. Notice how I just erased that little bit? So if we zoom in, you can see right here, that little bit of a diagonal line we need to get rid of. We don't need it anymore. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is draw a vertical line right from that corner. So my pencil's right on the corner. I'm going to draw a vertical line straight down. I'm going to do it on both sides. Pencil right on the corner, push the ruler up to it, draw a line straight down. And then I can connect these 1/8 of an inch markings. Okay. Then I'm going to go in and erase just a little bit more of that line that we don't need. Okay. So now our sidewalk is coming along. 1 inch, 1/4, 1/8. And then connect all of them. Okay. Now we can see that this is the part of the sidewalk that's coming up off of the ground, and this is the top of the sidewalk that the person would walk on, right? That's this section. We need to see the side part of this sidewalk over here on the left side, on the right, and on the right side over here on the left. To do that, you're going to just put your pencil down here on this bottom one. Notice how we're not right on the sidewalk. Down here near the bottom on that corner. And we're just going to line up our ruler with the vanishing point. Now it gets really skinny. I'm talking really skinny. It's probably even going to end up lining up together. That's okay. As stuff gets farther away from you, it gets harder and harder to see, and that's fine if you don't see it all the way up there. If you do see a little bit of it, that's okay as well. All right, you're just going to draw that little bit to help your brain understand that this is still coming up off of the road. Next, we are going to draw the sections in the sidewalk. Now, the sidewalk has different sections because if you didn't split the sidewalk into different sections, it would just come apart anyway later on. So we put these little markings in the sidewalk to help not get as many cracks in our sidewalks. I'm going to do sidewalk markings at 3/4 of an inch. So every 3/4 of an inch, so every 1/4 of an inch, I'm going to count over till I get 3/4 of an inch. So 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, make a mark. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, make a mark. Here at the end, I can see I'm going to get 1/4, 2/4, 3/4 is going to be off the paper, so I'm just going to leave that. I'm going to line up over here on the left as well, and then make my markings at 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4 is off the paper. You can do any measurement you like, but I like to do 3/4 of an inch because 1 inch seems a little too wide for my liking on this size of paper. Then I'm going to line up that point that we just made with the vanishing point and draw up to where we're done with the sidewalk. And that's it. And I'm just going to take each consecutive line, line up with the vanishing point, and draw. Here on the end, you can see the vanishing point has nothing to line up with. So I'm going to just line up to the vanishing point, and I'm going to eyeball. See how I can kind of line up my vanishing point and then use my ruler to see. That would be too small. That's too large. You need to get just in the right spot. Just kind of eyeball it. Your brain will fill in and say, yep, that's pretty close. Then make those markings over on the left side as well. Just up to where the sidewalk no longer is needed. Again, here at the very edge, we need to just kind of eyeball where we're going to be putting this sidewalk. And done. All right. Now, to show that the sidewalk is coming up off the road a little bit more, we're just going to make vertical lines right here. So these vertical lines coming down help our brain realize, oh yeah, it's really coming up off of the table, or up off of the ground. So we're just going to put those vertical lines in all the way through here. Pencil on mark, ruler up to it, and then draw. Now we need to see the sidewalk going all the way into the distance. We need to see it going towards the vanishing point, like you'd be able to walk all the way through your city. So what you need to do is just take your ruler, line it up with this first line we did on our sidewalk, line it up with the vanishing point, and draw all the way to the vanishing point. All the way to the vanishing point on both the right and left side. Now we need to take the sidewalk all the way back as well by having these little breaks in it. As we go farther back, our breaks need to get smaller and smaller and smaller. If we keep drawing the same size of break each time, it's going to look like our sidewalk is getting longer and longer and longer, which is just crazy. So instead, I just eyeball this. There is no measurement. I'm sure there's some mathematical formula to make it work, but on this there isn't really a mathematical formula. So we're just going to eyeball this situation, and we're going to just show that this is getting smaller the farther back we go. So each time, just draw a little smaller. And really make sure that your ruler is horizontal. The biggest thing we see going through this is what I like to call TSS, or tilted sidewalk syndrome. It's a disease that runs rampant through this project because we can't double check and make sure that our ruler is horizontal. So every time, just do a double take and make sure that it's horizontal. I'll show you, you can kind of see if you make diagonal lines, your brain starts to see something else going on. You can tell that that's not normal, right? That doesn't look quite right. Your brain's able to identify that information. So just smaller each time. Yeah, it's a little tedious doing every single little line through here, but you'll get it and it will look good. But don't, if you see that you've made a diagonal line like I just did, make sure to get it erased. Okay, you don't want a diagonal line. Make sure it's really nice and horizontal. Now I made that line all the way across. I'm going to use that here in a second to draw our side road. In the actual project, you'll need to finish this off. I think we're just going to stop right there and not continue up. For our side road, we need to line up our ruler down here on the bottom somewhere of how big we want our city block to be. I'm going to line up my ruler right here. I'm going to say the sidewalk's going to come and turn along this way. So this section where I drew those crooked lines on purpose, and I have to erase them anyway, I'm just going to make this where my road is. So figure out where your horizontal lines are going to go across to make your road go off to the side. All right? And then we need to continue the sidewalk right here. I'm going to line up with the one sidewalk piece just in front of it and draw it off the paper. Same thing up here. Line up the sidewalk piece just above it, draw it off the paper. Now most of this sidewalk is going to get erased because you're going to have a building sitting here in front of it. So in this case, we probably don't need to draw every single line that's going to go across. But I will line up my ruler. I like to do a few of them just so that they're there if I need them. And then just line up and draw those other sidewalk pieces. See how I'm lining up with this one that's already there, lined up with the vanishing point, and then in these other sidewalk areas, I just draw those diagonal lines to make it look like they're flat on the ground. Line up again, and off there it goes. Okay. We do need to make this piece of sidewalk look like it's three-dimensional as well. So we're going to draw just a little vertical line. I'm not going to measure it because it's only going to be about 1/16 of an inch. So just make it really skinny, really short, and then line it up as well and draw off the paper. Here's where you're going to get those vertical lines put in. Notice I use my ruler even for these little lines, just to double check, just to make sure. Okay. That's our main sidewalk area right there that we've got. Okay. Really simple, just a matter of measuring and then lining things up with the vanishing point, lining things up with the side of the paper. Okay. So vanishing point, line up. Side of the paper, line up. If you were to draw the lines on the road, you could do this right now. First and foremost, you'd want to find out where middle is. I already made the mark and left it, which was at 5.5 inches. So I leave it there. And I'm going to say I want my lines on the road to only be 1/4 of an inch wide. So I literally take 1/4 of an inch, split in half, is at the 1/8 inch mark, and I line that up with the 5.5. Then I have these two little marks that I can line up with the vanishing point. It might seem really small, but there's those lines going back. And then we just need to do the breaks in them the same way that we did with the sidewalk, right? Your first one's going to be a lot larger, a little bit longer. I'm using the edge of the paper to line up over here. Make sure I have a nice horizontal ruler. The break should be smaller, and then the dash on the road should be longer. The break, and then the actual dash. Remember, as it gets farther away, it gets smaller, so you've got to plan for that information for the viewer of your city project. Okay? And all these different breaks, you're going to have to take your eraser and erase out those little sections. And you would continue that all the way up through here to make sure you get evenly nice spaced sections.